Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. It's me, Steve Hall, as always, and on the other side is Pascal Four. Pascal, how's things?
Boring.
When
you just came on, you said like, yeah, how are things? And I was just like, yeah, fine. How about yourself? Fine. So nothing really happened. Over the past weeks, of course, same goes for you, same for me. Lots of things were just like happening on a weekly basis, and you are getting closer and closer to the initial outcome. And now you just ride along. And for you, I know you just finished another show with a 2 Bro Pro, which is always a mouthful of saying. And then also the Worlds is coming up. So yes. I would very much assume that there's more to talk about on your end than it is for me.
Possibly. Yeah, I guess so. The good news is, though, I know you are dealing with the post-show period like incredibly well. I think we may have even spoken about it last time, but I know previously for you, that was a dark time, like not even post-show, it was just post-diet phase where you hadn't quite made it to stage and you're leaner than you'd ever been in your entire life. And it's like not easy for you, but it's been much easier than ever before, which is incredible.
Yeah, I think it has also to do with what it is that we've talked about like so often already, the maturity, the experience that now comes into play. I even said it last time that even though that I've never been to stage, I took many people to stage by now, and hence I kind of knew what to expect. I knew the things that I want to avoid, and even though that I didn't really think about it, like pre-planning for it, you just know how to avoid those things subconsciously already. And right now, there is kind of no post-show period for me because the show, it was perfectly aligning with what it is that I wanted to do anyway. And it was just along the way. And because of that, it's just, I took it with me. And here we are just continuing what it is that I've been doing up to this point. And nothing really has changed. If you really think about it.
Food's a little bit higher, steps are down.
A little bit higher, yeah. The steps a little bit down, the food is a little bit higher, and just like overall a little bit more relaxed again. So in the sense of like those 4 weeks, I really committed and it was like, all right, this is full on commitment, no deviations, full on focus for that to strip off as much fat as possible in that short period of time so that I have the chance of bringing the best physique that I can. And now it's more of a matter of like back to kind of still in a deficit, but taking way more easy this time. And if I then on one day feel like I need or want a refeed or feel that my performance is slowly starting to come down or anything alike, or Katie wants some sushi, something like that, then I will allow for that. Because in it for itself, I don't necessarily need to lose more weight. That's why I can be a little bit more relaxed about it. But at the same time, I'm still feeling good. We've talked about it, about the goals at the midst of December with the surgery coming up and the prospect of then having or carrying as little fat around the chest as possible. But I don't have to get to a specific goal. I don't have to push it necessarily anymore. Right? And that just makes things super easy, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of, in a way, the bodybuilding taper / like reverse diet into a show.
It kind of is. I've never really thought about it that way, but kind of it is. Yeah,
it's a good experiment, actually.
It is
for you. Yeah, like data collection for future.
And maybe I should treat it that way as well, of bringing slowly up the calories on a weekly basis, maybe by like 100 calories, just to see how my body is reacting to that and how I feel with it as well, because I will then still be in a caloric deficit. So yeah, very good point that you're bringing up there.
It comes to mind in particular because it's something that I've hoped to get to this entire prep and never went down that road.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an interesting thing because in hindsight, maybe I might reflect on this prep and decided, I should have done it after, I don't know, that competition there, rather than dig again it didn't really give me any more, and I potentially didn't look better for it. I'm not sure at this stage. I'm too in the thick of things to really make that call. But it's only because it's been on my mind. I was just chatting with Brett, and we were kind of talking about, do we really want to keep digging for as long into this next show, or do we want to start tapering things up? And so I was just looking through like data collection, and I was like, I know I respond really well when you start feeding me back up. So we just decided, right, let's just dial things back a little bit leading into next week to reduce stress. And it's a very, very like reverse, like literally today changed from the 10 kilo weighted vest to a 5 kilo weighted vest. Everything else is the same. Steps the same, food the same, everything else. So
what are you hoping to get out of it in terms of like look and overall? Because this is also news to me, guys. This is something that Steve hasn't told me. So I'm curious to hear what your thought process is behind that.
More life to the physique. I was reflecting upon how I looked before the WNBF, which is a long time ago now. And whilst I was not as conditioned through the hamstrings and the glutes and the back, the amount of conditioning I've gained and the amount of fullness that's absolutely obvious when you look at it that I've lost is, I don't know. I would argue, I don't even know. If you put my physique now up against the physique back then, I would really hope the physique now would win on stage. But I definitely lost some fullness in that physique. And so then I was kind of like, right, with my frame, I can't really sacrifice. Like I need condition, but I also need fullness, because if I'm conditioned but not full, I will look like I just don't have the shape, you know? Whereas I need the kind of the shape and the roundness to the muscle tissue on my big frame. And so it's kind of trying to balance that. And my idea was always, I can dig for the condition, get further lines, and that can be a calling card, and I can get fullness through a peak week or what have you. And I'm just not quite sure I've ever quite got anywhere near back to the level of fullness that I had when I was a bit fatter. And maybe some of that fullness, and I have no doubt some of that fullness was not fullness, it was just fat. But you have to consider sometimes someone's fatter physique might overall look more aesthetic from a bodybuilding perspective. It might have more symmetry, more overall size. It might score better than a leaner physique. Just getting leaner for the sake of getting leaner isn't always the goal. So it's basically then reflecting on, everyone will remember I wanted to compete in 2020 and I got down to 180 pounds. I started coming through maintenance and I immediately jumped my calories up 500 and basically built them another 500 over a month. My body weight stayed stable and my look just got better. And I can remember this vividly because I was like, this is to remember for when you prep, Steve. You want to get into a position where you can eat up because your body responds very well to it. And I just have so many photos. It was a maintenance period and I was getting like crazy pumps, really looking good, better each week. And my body was just like taking on the calories. So it was kind of reflecting on that and being like, is it worth really pushing again hard further into this show? Or am I better off just tapering off a bit earlier to see if I can get more fullness? And then when I reflect on peak weeks, I don't think the rapid backload worked for me as well. I think it just didn't in hindsight. I want to get the professional photos. They should be coming soon. And then when I reflect upon when I did the linear load, when we had 6 days even versus 5 days, the 6 days brought a fuller and better physique, which I think was to the WNBF. It's always hard though, because things change. Like every single time I've gone through a peak, things have changed. Maybe I've got more confident, or maybe I've got leaner and so it looks better, or what have you. But it's just a sense of, and I think ultimately, in my eyes, it's the difference between like 6 days or 5 days versus like 8 days or something. And it's not like I'm coming out of a deficit. I'm just maybe reducing the deficit slightly, like going from a 10 kilo vest to a 5 kilo vest. What change is that going to make? Maybe I'll lose 100 calories of expenditure. maybe I'll gain some back because I actually already have noticed that I am more willing to move when I have a 5 kilo weighted vest on, which is interesting for itself. And that's part of what people promote about reverse dieting is like you give someone a little bit more and they end up almost overcompensating for it. The body just absorbs it. And some people have that response. Other people don't. They just like take on food and they just like store it. But I've always been one of those, if you give me a little bit, I end up just like taking it on and I'm like, oh yeah, give me more. So that's in a long-winded way, the rationale. So it's not a unthought out decision. It's very much what in this scenario is going to provide the best outcome for Steve at Worlds. Every decision I make for myself in bodybuilding, I try and make very rational and don't try and make from a, what's it called? I can't think, a subjective standpoint, which is why I ran it past Brett and we had a back and forth. We just came to a conclusion, like based off previous diet history, based off previous peak weeks, based off how the last few months have gone, maybe it's worth not to dig as hard and maybe we'll get a bit more fullness with a bit more condition, and that's going to bring a better physique than digging for tiny bits of extra condition and lacking a bit of fullness and just not quite bringing as good a overall package to stage. Did that make sense?
It makes sense, absolutely. I don't think that I would fully agree with everything that you said there, but this is something there. Yeah, from the way that I was looking or what?
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
It's all right. As soon as you said this is news to me, I was like, I know Pascal's not going to agree with this. And actually on that point, it's why you can't talk to too many people about it.
Yeah.
Because you'll get one person saying this, one person saying that, one person saying that, and you're just like, oh shit, now I don't know what to do. And I find myself having to prevent that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see that.
So I appreciate your opinion, but give it to me. But I ultimately, I'm not sure.
No. I think that if you have a plan, it doesn't really matter and it doesn't really add any kind of benefit to the things that I'm saying or the doubts that I'm having. And I think that you probably sat down together, had a close assessment at the physique, and came up with a strategy, and then I think you should run with that strategy instead of jumping back and forth and be like, you're taking one step forward and then you're just like pulling back again. Like you want to enter the dungeon, right? Instead of being like, yeah, I'm going to war. No. Rather not today. No, I'm going. And you don't want to be in that position. That's why I don't want to plant any kind of wrong ideas into your head with me stating or just coming up with unsolicited thoughts, basically, because I haven't really compared your physique now from back then.
I was going to send you it. Yeah. It's surprising how, like, you can't deny how much fullness I've lost in the upper body, in particular it was a 1 day out from the WNBF. And my body weight difference isn't even that big, but you can see how much of like just the physique is just, it happens to my physique, which like in 2017, when you look at me as I'm getting leaner, I look decent and I've got like good shape. And then I get even leaner and you're like, now you're looking back to a bit of a skeleton. And I just saw smidges of that.
Yeah. What I'm wondering though, and this is just like me saying out my thoughts openly, is how much did the last two shows play into your decision making right now, in that it's still an objective decision. And I think it's very, very hard to tell at your current state, of course, to really 100% say with confidence that it is a rational decision, even though that we then in that moment think it's rational. You know what I mean? Because I know that those two last shows, they were disheartening for you. And they brought a lot of doubts also once again in your head, right? And that this is where I'm more so coming from. That the outcomes of two shows where you were hoping for more, that this then impacts your overall decision. And we can't help it to just be emotionally invested, even though that we think that we are trying to stay as objective as possible.
The good news is, Pascal, hadn't actually even thought about those two shows. in
really?
that decision-making process. It was literally, what can I do to make myself look the best for this last show? I only compared like I was comparing my peak. So I was comparing how did I really look the day out when I did a rapid backload versus how did I look a day out doing a linear load. And then I was like, I'm going to check back to how I looked at the WNBF. And actually, I will say AJ reached out to me and said he thought my look for the WNBF was actually the best look he'd seen of me. Obviously not as conditioned. And he was just stating that with my physique, and I agree with him. So he wasn't really telling me anything I didn't know, but it was a good reminder that I need fullness, like, because as soon as I start looking a bit flat, that things just aren't that great. But having said that, I still think the best physique I overall brought was to the WNBF, at least in my opinion.
Yes.
And that was the 6-day linear load, essentially.
Yeah. But
so
that's what I had in mind as well with that physique. And yeah, that's where I was coming from as well, with like also that I disagree kind of to looking great. I mean, you still look great at the BNBF. The way that I can recall, don't really have like the close details now in comparison to another, so I really can't talk about the fullness comparison. But I can tell that I do remember that the WNBF, in my opinion, was your best look to date.
And I would agree. I think that was. But I do definitely know I respond well to tapering off fatigue. Like I hold on to a lot of fatigue and I hold on to a lot of stress. And when I get food, my body just like it showed itself. My maintenance is like in a 500 calorie range because it just gobbles it up. And I think sometimes that happens when I obviously research the linear load a lot. And when I hear the guys talking about it and I hear Dr. Joe talking about it, he says the one key thing that can often go wrong with the linear load, if anything can go wrong, is that you're not assertive enough with it. So you're too minimalistic with your kind of increases.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I have been that way, but it's easy to be that way. I think most people would side to that side versus being too pushy. I'm just like, well, if we taper into it a little bit as well, then hopefully it kind of compensates for that somewhat. And it was essentially do I either do a more aggressive linear load or do I do a more elongated linear load? So it might be the same carbs that I consume and the same overall calories, but the window is longer this way round versus the other way round. So it sounds like minutia because it really is. And every time I think about it, I'm like, what? I'm getting way too obsessed about which of these I choose. And actually, I will be completely honest, this way round's more comfortable because everyone, like, it's more comfortable to go, like, I don't know, maybe some people are different, but like to go from like really low to really high, that is, I would prefer the middle ground generally. Oh. And it's like, well, what's going to provide the better result? And I said to Brett, I'll be honest, the tapering now would be more comfortable to me, but I don't want comfort. I want the best physique. And he came back and he actually said, you know, comfort's important for looking your best as well. If one approach is going to be inherently less stressful to you, stress isn't a good thing. Stress is not going to make you look better. And I was like, that is actually a good point. And so I was like, what's the least invasive thing we can do? Let's start tapering off the weighted vest in preparation for knowing that I'm not going to take it to Worlds anyway. Yeah. I'm not going to be wearing it during peak week. It is, and I'll be honest, the 10 kilos, wearing 10 kilos for the majority of your day, don't care who you are, like that is, like you feel it. Whereas I don't feel 5 kilos, like 5 kilos. And it does wear on me. Like I won't bend down to do things as much. It's just, it is a lot. And I've been wearing it for months upon months. So even just removing that was like a huge mental relief and so significant that I have to say, like, I think overall it's actually better to have taken it off than to have kept on. And it's a hard one because you can't trick the body. So I couldn't put a 20 kilo weighted vest on and hope I'm just going to increase my expenditure by tons. because ultimately, just like if you do tons more cardio or tons more steps, the body adapts, you get more efficient at them, you're more lazy earlier or later in the day or what have you. And I wonder if there's like there's obviously a sweet spot. And yeah, maybe it's 7.5 kilos. I don't know. But I'm interested. It's another experiment, what have you. And at the end of the day, like whilst I want to do my absolute best at Worlds, and that's the decision-making process here is all about bringing my best, I'm not expecting to go and win my category and go into the overall and win a pro card. So it's not like it's like this decision. I shouldn't be too stressed about this decision.
Yeah, that is what I would have said anyway, that you are now at a point where those decisions will not make that much of a difference. I mean, if you're not already at the point where you are ultra lean, right? And then it's a really good question of like, shit, do we really want to risk it? Because now in what is it? 7 days? No, 9 days. You won't really change much anymore, right? So the question is like, how can you reduce the stress? How many stresses can you reduce, and still work to looking your very best?
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
So it just, basically weighed up both sides and made the call that it makes sense. And it again, like I say, it's not like I'm out of a deficit. I'm still in a big deficit right now. Tomorrow, maybe I'll get 25 grams of carbs more. And then we'll assess what's the scale doing, how am I looking? Maybe then we'll reduce the vest to wearing it just in the morning. And then it's already Monday where I'd start loading on like 400 grams of carbs already. So it's kind of like, it's just transitioning that rather than being in a deep plunge to an increase. It's just like, let's just taper into it and see if that extra taper of stress reduction, everything pays off for the finals. Because it's frustrating because I always wanted to get to that. And that's why I'm like, I don't know how people, I don't know when I'd have when would I make that call that I don't need to dig anymore. Like it's such a hard call to make because you may very well be holding on to a bunch of fatigue that is hiding like a lot of the condition that you have, and you can't display it because you got water retention or what have you. Or maybe truly you do have a bunch more fat to lose and you just need to go. And it's hard to make that call for yourself of what point do you tip back in that direction. And I mean, I'm not going to get the true effects from it because really you want 2+ weeks, really, don't you?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have a week and a few days. So.
Yeah. And also one thing that we've now touched on is stress overall, that you want to reduce it. And that's the main thing why you went with that option. Now, we've been talking about this, I think either it was last week or this week in regards to the peak week approach. No, I think it was last week. No, was it this week? At the beginning of this week, after the 2 Pro, when you've talked me through your experience with a rapid backload, and that you then came up with a conclusion of like that, in your opinion, it doesn't really have that much of a benefit, at least to you and your experience, that it also causes massive distress most of the time due to like the sheer amount of food that you now have to digest, and also just the sheer amount of food that you have to eat overall. All right, tell me a little bit about this, because I think that many people would love an approach like this because it sounds so cool to eat like 1,000 grams of carbs in one single day or so, but forget about the aspect that this causes a lot of stress as well.
Yeah, I think you said that really well and you set it up really well. So after the WNBF, it was a week until 2 Bros. And so basically we dug and I pushed hard from Sunday, which was show day, but I ate under 2, like I basically dug that day pretty much up until Friday with the Sunday show. And so what we did on the Friday was bring my carbs up to 800 grams. Protein was about 150, so that was brought down to allow for the digestion of the carbohydrates. Fats were down at like 30 all week, so they were low.
Very low.
Yeah, low, very low for me. And so, yeah, that was basically to maximize glycogen storage. Yeah. And we're like, let's try 800 grams. We kind of discussed it back and forth, and off the recommendations that you see put through with Cliff, off body weight and all of this. And with the linear load, I'd got up to like 650 was like the top end. So it's like, let's go. We need to go significantly above that to just see what my body can take, what will spill me. And so, yeah, leading into that, the thing I really appreciate about the linear load is that every day you get an assessment. Every day you're looking at your physique, morning, midday, night, morning, midday, night, morning, midday, night. It's very easy, manageable. Your food choices don't need to change that much because it's no extremes. You're just having a bit more of what you normally have. Maybe you have an extra serving of rice, this sort of thing. Fluid, sodium, taper up a little bit, but it's very normal. So it's not extreme. It's very comfortable in many ways. And you build confidence every single day. You're looking better every day, basically. And if you slightly overdo it, you can come back the next day and you can be very confident in your look. You wake up, you look like this. After looking like that the night before, you can like predict you're going to look better because you look like this evening. And I found that to be really rewarding as an athlete, to look better every day, be more confident every day. And stress is declining every day. You're not training super hard. If anything, your cardio and steps are coming down. Fatigue is reducing every day. Whereas when you come into the rapid backload, it was digging. Stressful every day. You're not looking better every day. You're looking worse every day, actually, because you're fatigued. And even if you deload some of those days, you're run down because you're kind of keeping cardio high, steps high. You're trying to deplete glycogen, especially if you're trying to kind of super compensate and deplete and super compensate. I wasn't essentially depleting because I was still on higher than like 50 grams of carbs for sure. Like my carbs were still at like 190. So came into the rapid backload at 800 grams. And the first meal went great. I felt really like decent off that. And every meal thereafter, I had, what was it? Like, I think I mixed in oats with rice flour and had like my usual protein oats, but with rice flour in there, essentially. And maybe I had a bowl of Cocoa Pops as well. And I felt good after that. But after my next meal, I just was exhausted. And like, it was like I could go and have a nap, no doubt about it. But I needed to keep doing my job and I needed to go train. And it was just like, you know, you eat a huge meal and you're just like, I could go to sleep. The whole day I felt like that. Apparently that's quite normal for a lot of people to feel like that way. And when you consider your body's just gone from essentially like 1,000 calorie deficit and now you're going to like 1,000 calorie surplus, that's a big swing. That's a big stress. And it has to digest all of this food now. So you can see why it responds in that, maybe that way. So that day wasn't particularly fun, especially because your protein's down, your fat's down. It is just shitloads of carbs. Like even from it's not an enjoyable food to consume, like amount of food. You have to drink quite a lot, keep your sodium high. And then the next day we did a fat load, which was much closer to 3,000 calories, more like maintenance intake. Fats came all the way up to 140, which I think is the highest I've ever purposefully eaten in my life. Definitely the highest I've ever purposefully eaten. But it was actually nice. Protein was at a reasonable level. Carbs were like down where they were before. And that day was decent because any of the kind of bloating and distress that I had from the first day, that kind of cleanup day could be called, or the fat load day, got rid of all of that. And it felt like I was fairly well satiated and I wasn't super hungry. That was quite an enjoyable day. But I just didn't feel confident in my look. I didn't get that build every single day of fullness. And despite Brett, who probably has a much more objective opinion, he thought I looked very full and he thought I'd spilled in my chest and he thought it was a more extreme look that I brought to stage. I didn't feel as confident in it, in myself. And I didn't get the time of physique assessment. Over that weekend, it was lots of commuting to the venue, and then it was kind of staying behind, being cold, and there was nowhere for us to pose or look at our physiques and stuff. And it was just me and Charlotte, so I didn't have anyone who could, like, I don't know, look at me in that sense. So there's many variables going into why I didn't feel as good for this. But ultimately, I don't think the cost versus benefit of the rapid backload outweighed the linear load for me. The linear load felt so much better, and I felt so much more confident. And the morning of, I definitely felt much fuller and more alive in my physique. And it could be the WNBF. I was with you. I was with Jess. It was like an awesome event. It was like a big deal to us all. And it was very
just
fun.
in an alerted state due to the shitty night.
Yeah, it was not the best night's sleep. I actually slept better because I slept at home for the Two Bros show. But yeah, just in every way, I didn't feel like I enjoyed the process as much, felt as confident, and I don't think the physique and the look was better than what I brought for the WNBF. I need photos to really get a good assessment, but I can even remember, like, backstage, I could get a pump, but I just didn't have the same vascularity that I had at the WNBF and things like this. So yeah, ultimately, unless, and I think I said this to you, the rapid backload is great, or the kind of constrained loading can be great if you need the time to bring in condition still. But if you've got good condition, I'm not sure digging for another few days is going to bring a better look than having those days. And that kind of leads into our first discussion of having a little bit more time to kind of eat into the show. I think for some people, having more days of reducing stress and to load up is going to bring about a better look than more days of digging, stressing, and trying to get condition to ultimately not bring about the best physique at the end. Obviously, there's physiological, psychological factors with all of this, but I think probably we've learned for me, and one thing I can say is a really obvious biofeedback is on the rapid backload day, I had edema in my ankles. And I don't tend to get that with just a linear load. Yeah. And it just is a representation of stress on the body when I get that. It cleared up. It definitely cleared up, but that did happen. So that was the experience.
Yeah, I find it very interesting because then we continue talking about leading into the off season, then talking about how we are both going to approach the off season. Also there, once again, due to the experiences that we both went through, and it's so funny because Steve, you and I have been doing this together since like 2017. And before that, we have already gained some knowledge and experience working with other people. Of course, not to the same extent as we are doing right now, but still, we are so often coming to the same conclusion due to our observations, and we're working with relatively the same audience and following the same people, following the same evidence. And both you and I, we are always somewhat independent of another, come to the same conclusion. And whenever we are talking about it, then we realize that we came to that conclusion independent of another. And that is one of the things where we both said, like, okay, for the next off season, I'm going to take a slower gaining approach so that you are able to stay in a surplus for longer, because that assertive rate of weight gain, where you're then hitting very, very high body fat levels, most of the time aren't really, or in my opinion, I don't really see a lot of benefits to pushing it up that much as a natural athlete. And most of the time, it falls now back to what it is that we've been talking about. It falls back to a stressful environment. When you're going from being a very, very light individual and pushing all the way up, let's just say you, for example, right now, what's your weight right now, Steve?
170.
170 all the way up to 200 pounds or even beyond. Some people are pushing beyond that. And there's a discrepancy
40,
of like
50.
30, 40, 50 pounds in just a time span of like 6 months to a year. This has major implications on your body. And whether you like it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, it still is true. And I know this also just looking from a perspective of heart health. And it's so funny because some people who take that approach are also the ones who are then working and incorporating enzymes for a better gut health and stuff like that, or incorporating things such as still cardio in the off season, while neglecting the most simplistic thing that has probably the biggest and most impact on their overall cardiovascular system, and that is your body weight. Going from such a light individual to being such a heavy individual has major implications on your heart health. All right, and I will, and you said it in those voice messages that we just put across, you don't really see any good reason of having an approach like this, pushing it, forcing yourself up there in regards to the body weight and causing such a stressful environment and response for the system. Because what's beneficial about that? As a natural athlete, I don't think that you have to go there.
Yeah, for me, it's important to remember what the ignition is for muscle growth, and that's training performance.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel good, if you're force feeding, you feel lethargic, you feel sick lots of the day, you're probably unable to recover from as much volume. That's a key one. You're probably not in a very productive state for muscle growth, because your training performance isn't going to be as good as if you're a bit lighter. And you'll hear people say, oh, I lost 10 pounds and I actually feel better and I'm performing better in the gym. You probably pushed it a bit too far. And sometimes you have to push it too far to know. But I reflect upon my last off season. It actually makes me upset a little bit to think about it, because it was literally torture every day. I still prefer this. I still prefer digging, wearing a 10 kilo weighted vest, doing 20,000 steps, to force feeding every meal, to the point of which I felt like vomiting at meals. Like, it to me now sounds ridiculous that I pushed that far. And I don't know what made me think I needed to do that. I don't know. You hear people say you need to push to new heights of body weight to be able to put on new muscle tissue. Don't make any sense to me. What was the point of being lighter ever then? Like, you're not gaining muscle when you're gaining from 180 to 200 pounds? Of course you are. If you feel better in that time, don't push past 200 pounds.
And it immediately contradicts, or is a contradiction to then the evidence that we have about body recomposition and all. And we just know that body recomposition is a thing. Now, is that the most efficient way of just staying at around maintenance level of calories? No, but the processes of muscle gain, muscle breakdown, fat gain, fat breakdown, they always happen at the same time. It's just that one is always overpowering the other depending on your environment. And the environment, we're talking about nutrition that is coming in, nutrition that you're expending, and also then the resistance training, and then of course fatigue management comes into play as well. But those things are determined of then these processes, and what of these processes is actually overpowering the other. It's not like massive excess of calories and massive excess of body weight as well. We're just like force feeding yourself, pushing it up there, and it just contradicts, or it stands in true contradiction to the evidence as well. And I think you brought up a good point. It may be good and worth playing around, testing it out, pushing your body weight up so that you know where you are performing and feeling your very best. But one of my athletes, he experienced a little bit of heart arrhythmias as well. And as the listeners may know, I've experienced that as well. I was going through several different tests, such as MRI scan, the EKG, which I did. And it was first up until the point that my athlete said, like, my doctor said that he asked me whether I've gained or lost a lot of body weight in a short period of time. And he answered with yes, because we were going through a cutting phase and then regaining once again. And the doctor said, like, yeah, this definitely also causes, like, or can cause heart arrhythmias, because the body is always in a constant state of adjusting to the new body weight. So the heart tries to adjust itself that it keeps a 170-pound male alive. But if you're then spiking up to 200 pounds, it doesn't really just adjust overnight, right? It then needs to work harder maybe, and by that it can cause some arrhythmias as well. And that's why I'm getting my an EKG done here in December another time, so that I can see whether something has now changed, being just like nearly 20 kilograms lighter since I did the last time a test like this, and see how the body is now responding to just being a lighter individual. So I deviated a little bit, but overall, I totally agree with you. It sounds nice, and it sounds at first, if you don't really think about it, logical, because you are gaining weight, right? You're training hard. Performance is also going up, so there must be some muscle tissue as well. Sure, but can that muscle tissue not also come without kind of forcing to put on body weight? So body fat in that sense? Probably. Do you then feel better? Chances are yes as well, right?
Yeah, I think one thing I will at least definitely state is I for sure saw benefits to pushing myself out of my comfort zone. No doubt about it. I do think there is a sense of you want to get a bit uncomfortable in your off season, but not to an extreme level of discomfort. What I mean is previous off seasons, I'd handicap my body weight at 180 pounds. I was like, no, I shouldn't push above 180. I'll get too fat. That's ridiculous. For me, that was ridiculous. But then I took that to the next level and pushed over 200, probably going in mid 190s. And once I started getting those senses of like, seriously, like this is someone who is, they're not like, I don't know, saving all their calories for the evening and saying they feel stuffed and they can't eat anymore, or eating just tons of junk and they're just not in a healthy state to digest food and feel well. This is someone who is spreading their calories through the day, is at a reasonable level of fatness and taking care of things. They're sleeping well, all of this. If they're starting to feel like garbage and you can pin it on, you're just a bit too heavy for what like your body likes to be, that's, you kind of know that's your point. But don't kind of get to, because you can get comfortable where you just end up maintaining a lean physique all the time where it feels comfortable. I do think you need to be pushing beyond that. It's just how far, and that's where we're like not crazy far.
And not only that, also how fast.
Yes.
I think that over time, ultimately speaking, of course, you want to be a heavier individual with basically a lower body fat percentage, right? Because that means that you're most likely carrying more muscle mass. But does that really need to happen in just like 6 months or so? I can't really see a good argument to be made to make it that fast, because that, once again, also here causes such a tremendous stress on the system. So why not take a slower approach and let the biofeedback speak for itself when it is acceptable to push back or pull back again, and to push it up a little bit more, instead of having a target of like, in 6 months I want to have XYZ body weight. Why not just ensure that you are in a reasonable caloric surplus and just train hard and focus on the training? Because if you're inducing that, like a hypertrophic stimulus that is sufficient, eating well and taking care of your rest and recovery, the muscle mass will come, right? And if you just like force yourself and putting the body weight up there, you're just deviating from basically your homeostatic settling range, rather, where the body is feeling comfortable. And that just puts unnecessary stress on yourself, on the system. And I don't think that it makes you feel good overall anyway.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Yeah, I think you basically just want a surplus that's just about trackable. And once you've found that, you don't need to, like, it doesn't need to be trackable a pound a week, trackable. No. For majority of people, quite a bit less than that. And then like you're good. I definitely agree with that. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say. Oh yeah, it was just as you were talking through this, I was just like getting really excited about
Gaining.
Yeah. Off-season training. I was just like, man, I've so not been enjoying training for the last month. I hate to say it. I haven't been enjoying it because it's been so up and down. I've had so many peak weeks and deload sessions. And now, as I'm gutting things out, I'm seeing a bit of performance drop off. Not much, but a bit. And for the past months, it's just been maintaining anyway. Man, I'm just so excited to actually get some food in me, get a bit of fat on me, so that I can start being really productive in the gym again. And I said it on my story when I did my hack squats, and I was like, this like level of just fucking pure focus and drive to just scrape through to maintain a number. If I put all of this into my off season, fuck me, there's no way I'm not growing. Like that amount of intent and focus. And that's why I think actually competitors often grow better than non-competitors, is because comp prep, to do it like quote unquote properly, you have to get mentally just to another place. And I want to take that, and every time I'm like in a well-fed position on like the hack squat, I should be thinking, fuck Steve, you're an animal in prep, you can bring fucking next level now.
It's just hard though, because it's a common phenomenon that you see with a lot of people. And I've been there myself in the off season, that at some point you're just getting complacent, you slack off a little bit with the meticulousness of tracking. You sometimes fall even victim of not pushing it as hard as you can in the gym, because things just always feel kind of hard, right? And keeping that focus can be tough at times. And I don't even know whether, I think, of course, there's always a spectrum, and I don't want people to be as hyper-focused as they are in a contest prep, because that, of course, requires a lot of attention, a lot of focus, and that takes away the energy and the focus from other things in life. And the off-season is also there to fall back to living your life again a little bit more so. But at the same time, this is the opportunity to grow. And many people leave that opportunity just on the side, right? And don't take really advantage of that.
This is why I really like the way we periodize our mesocycles, because you're completely right. Having that level of unrelenting focus and drive, it isn't something that's sustainable. It isn't. And the way that we periodize is we ramp that up and then we deload it. And then you get that drive back. It's kind of like at the start of a deload, you've earned it because you're craving it, because you've just done that relenting focus. Then you deload, you get a bit of life back. You get a bit of sense of, okay, I don't need to push so hard in the gym. And then you go again, you ramp it back up. And I just think that allows people to work so much harder than if they're always trying to have that unrelenting focus every session. I can't imagine doing that for very long. No. Like it just is unsustainable, that kind of mentality, and it burn you out, I imagine.
At least, I mean, for some people, it will be possible to do that for several years. For some people, only a couple of weeks or a month. And this is also what is being reflected in the retention rate of a physique sport athlete or bodybuilder. Hardly ever do you see people doing this kind of consequently for like more than 2 to 5 years. And it's so funny because we met Harry Ransom at the WNBF, and the people who have been at the seminar 2016, the 3DMJ seminar, many people are the ones who are still around, right? But you don't really see many people coming new into the space anymore, or at least maintaining here, because it's just like, it's hard, right? It's just hard, and if you don't really love it, you will be gone in a matter of no time. All right. So yeah,
you've got to find strategies to balance it. Actually, it makes me think of, I think it was at the WNBF, potentially, I don't think he listens to this, but I think he was the teen competitor, and this was his last year of being a teen, and he was telling me how he was going to compete next year as a junior. Ethan, was it Ethan?
Yeah, the one who won?
He was the only one in the category.
Oh, the teen. Oh, sorry. I thought novice. Sorry. No, then it wasn't Ethan.
So, but I don't know. I can't remember this guy's name, but I was just trying to, I didn't want to give him unsolicited feedback, but I was like, I think you need to take some time off. Like, don't compete every year because you won't last. It's just unlikely that you will last, and you're certainly not going to make the best progress. You do need to take some time away. I absolutely see why people might compete every couple of years, because like I said, it gives you a sense of drive and it allows you to keep going in your off seasons. But like, there is also life, and growing muscle takes a lot of time, as we've just kind of reflected upon. The term that comes back, and a lot of things we've discussed here, is balance. And whilst bodybuilding is not balanced, I think in the long run, you need to find your balance. And at times, in the long run, it looks balanced from a bird's eye perspective. But from an every day perspective, right now I am not balanced. And Pascal's now a little bit more balanced than he was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to look different for everyone on their own bodybuilding journey. And as you progress through it, you have kids or what have you, have other responsibilities. You're in prep, you're not in prep, you're deep in off season, you're early in like a recovery diet, what have you. So yeah, it's
It's funny that you're talking about balance, and I think that this can then be the last topic for today, because Katie, she just met up with her girls on the weekend, and some of them are following me over on Instagram as well. And of course, that came up, and Katie told me about it. And they were just like, how do you feel about Pascal doing this, like bodybuilding? And it's so funny how people who have nothing to do with bodybuilding and with physique sports have what their perception of the sport is. And it's quite crazy because they have some misconceptions that are so honed in without even actually thinking about it, or never really doing any kind of research on it or so, because they were immediately assuming that this is damaging for my health and all that kind of stuff. And it's bad for the relationship and all that kind of stuff, right? They were just like, what do you find about it? She was just like, how should I find it? He's just doing his stuff, right? And she is very, very open about it, and very much like, if he loves it, I will support him. And they were just like, yeah, well, if my man were to do something like that, I wouldn't allow it. And she was like, holy shit, you would really say that you, as an adult, you're telling another adult what he can or can't do, especially for something like this, because you think that it's unhealthy without actually having any kind of facts and evidence to support that. I mean, if you really go down to extreme levels of leanness, I can see that. I can definitely see that. Or if you're taking like lots of substances, I can see that as well. But I don't think that right now I'm in a position where it's unhealthy for the system. I don't think that my body fat percentage is so low that I don't know, it's unhealthy. And I would, it was just like funny to see how how others around you who are not in bodybuilding are perceiving something like that. And to fall back to the balance side of things, even if we think it's balance, for the outsider, it may still look like as if we are obsessed and as if we are doing something detrimental to our health and to maybe other people around us.
I wonder if that's because they just hear in the news like such and such bodybuilder died, and they assume that you're that. They put you in the same category as that person. And as a natural bodybuilder, the worst things that you can really do for your health is, like we've already described, putting on weight too fast and going too high in body weight. Apart from that, and then maybe disordered eating, like there's not a whole lot that we're going to get ourselves into trouble for. And a lot of what we do is health promoting. Yeah. It's not the healthiest way to live, but I mean, the healthiest way to live is often not very fun.
No. And also, to be fair, like those levels of leanness that are unhealthy, they are unsustainable most of the time over the long term anyway, to begin with. And of course, we need to differentiate between females and males, of course, because for females, the threshold where it may get a little bit more detrimental to their health is probably much higher than for males. So, i.e., the other way around as well. Like for females, exceeding that threshold comes much, much earlier than for us males. We can push it much further without any kind of detrimental consequences. And also, you can't really look at it in kind of in such a narrow way, right? How is it unhealthy? What are you comparing that with? Are we just speaking about like blood panel, about cardiovascular health, about mental health, about what is it that we are referring to? Because in it for itself, it's not unhealthy. Taking it to extreme levels is probably it, right? But this is, once again, as always, no sport is really healthy if you are taking it to extreme levels. No. Maybe, I don't know, riding a horse. I have no idea. It's not that unhealthy for you probably, but it is then for the horse. But yeah, so all these sports.
Chess.
And chess, yeah. Unless you're doing chess boxing. Right? And I just find it, once again, very, very interesting how other people who have nothing to do with the sport are still holding on to a lot. And those are medical, so these are doctors. Right?
Wow.
Who have never done any kind of research, apparently, or informed themselves about it. And it's not their obligation, to be honest, because people like us aren't really the people they are working with, like, most of the time. But it was just striking me as weird, because I think that over the years, we have come to a place and position where we are quite good at balancing our life with what it is that we also want for ourselves as well. And yeah.
I just have one thought in my mind. I'm interested to see when you actually increase your food substantially, if you reflect back and think, oh, I thought I felt really good then. Now I feel really good.
Yeah.
Just probably. Because I've seen this so many times,
yeah,
and even for
absolutely.
myself.
No, absolutely. This would probably be it. And this is something that we've talked about in the past a couple of times as well. But I can't really say that I'm feeling bad right now. That's the thing. And then maybe, I don't know, the EKG that I'm then going to do is going to confirm that, at least from a cardiovascular perspective as well. Who knows, right?
Where shall I leave this? I guess the next time we'll be talking, I'll be in Vegas, so we won't be talking, actually, because I'll be in Vegas now. No, wait, will I be in Vegas or on a plane? What time is it? I get in on Wednesday night, actually. So I will be in Vegas. I'll actually be having like a polygraph or something in a few hours. So yeah, I'm excited, nervous, terrified. I've been telling my athletes how it's just so out of me and not like me to just like, I don't know, I would never randomly book a holiday to Vegas.
Yeah.
Literally, this is the only way you could get me to in Vegas within like, I'd need like 6 months to plan this sort of thing, typically. So yeah, it's crazy, but I am honestly so honored and humbled to have this opportunity, because like it kind of, again, makes me a little bit upset in a proud way. Like once I shed a tear of pride, this little natty, like who got into this industry in like 2014, competed, came like second last in my novice show. And now many years later, I've managed to somehow scrape an invite to Worlds and essentially do what is the Mr. Olympia for naturals and be on stage with some insane physiques and meet a ton of amazing people. It's going to be an honor to represent the UK, to represent Revive. And in a way, I feel like I'm representing everyone who connects and has followed the journey in some way. Like I can't quite believe it. I don't think I will believe it until it's all done. And then I'll be like, what the hell just happened?
No, absolutely. And I think that you deserved it, man. You've worked so hard for it. And I think that everyone in life should be rewarded when they are putting in the work and effort. Of course, that's not always the case. Life isn't always fair in that kind of sense, at least what our definition of fair is. But we are in a privileged position, living in the Western society, Western world, being healthy, being able to do something like this, and being privileged enough to be able to put in the work and effort for something like bodybuilding. And for you, because you deliberately try to get better, it's now paying off. And I think that this is just, you're basically just rewarding yourself. That's what it is that you're doing at the moment.
I appreciate that a lot. It's going to be something to remember for the rest of my life. And let's see what I can do.
Absolutely.
In terms of my hopes, just if people want to know what I'm hoping, the biggest hope is just to go and enjoy the experience, which I have no doubt about it. Soak every little bit in. On Vegas as well, being there with my best friend, meeting as many people as possible. But in terms of competitive hopes, because I think some people have a misconception that I'm not competitively driven, and trust me, I absolutely am, and I want to do my absolute best. I want to realistically land in the top half of my class. If I can do that, fuck me. I'll be very, very proud.
Yeah.
If I don't, I don't. And I'll come back and I'll keep trying to be my best. And that's all we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, we leave it here. Wish you all the best, Steve.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll speak to you guys very soon then. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers, guys. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.